Hello, welcome to Forward Boldly. I'm Christine Niles, and in collaboration with Regina Magazine, I bring you a short conversation with Benedict Nguyen, a Canon lawyer, formerly chancellor of the Diocese of La Crosse, Wisconsin, under Cardinal Raymond Burke, and now a professor of canon law at Ave Maria University. So, Mr. Nguyen, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be with you, Christine.
Now, we've just wrapped up a somewhat tumultuous 2 weeks with the Synod on the family in Rome, and quite honestly, it generated a tremendous deal of confusion in the media, also among Catholics. Obviously, there were some cardinals and bishops who were pushing a pretty progressive agenda. Fortunately, they largely failed in their attempt. And Cardinal Burke has come out as something of a hero in all of this, because he's been one of the most outspoken cardinals defending church dogma. So before we get into all these questions, I was just wondering, I know you worked under him as a chancellor there in the Diocese of La Crosse. What was your time like there? What was he like as a bishop, as a man?
Oh, Cardinal Burke is a wonderful son of the church. He's probably one of the most brilliant people, much less the most brilliant canon lawyers in the world right now, I think. But the most important thing is that he's such a humble and holy man. It's kind of difficult for me to read some of the things that have been printed and said about him in public because I know him so personally, and it's really not what they're trying to portray him as. He's the most kind, gentle, loving man that I've ever met, and he really has a heart of gold for the people that he's interacting with, for the people that he serves, and a deep, deep love and devotion for Holy Mother Church as well.
And I know that there have been a lot of people who've been hit really hard, that he's going to be removed from the Curia, but I think he's dealt with it in a very gracious way.
Oh, I absolutely think so, too. He's such a loyal son of the church. I remember that someone had asked him about his reactions to being transferred, and the first thing that came out of his mind was, nobody has a right to this, and I'll serve the church wherever she wants me to serve. It's a very shining example of not only loyalty, but just devotion and humility to the church.
Yeah, and I've been extremely grateful. I and many other people have been extremely grateful that he's spoken out so strongly these past 2 weeks, trying to fight against this progressive agenda that was clearly, people there clearly trying to manipulate things at the Synod. I've been very grateful for his voice. So
yeah, his has been a very wonderful and strong voice, and very clear as well. If you notice in the way that he has stood firm, he's never taken any pot shots at anybody. He's never went down to that level. It's always been very gentlemanly, very firm, and very, very loyal to the church, and really to church history, to church dogma, and canonical disciplines, all that rolled into one. And I think that's the true model of somebody who is pastoral in the church, is somebody who can actualize those types of beliefs and doctrines, but yet still be very kind and gentle to people.
Yeah, and you mentioned, too, that he's very clear. I think that's one of the things that is so frustrating to a lot of Catholics today, is the lack of moral clarity, even coming from certain shepherds. And when you deal with someone like Cardinal Burke, you read his writings and listen to him, there's clarity there, which is so refreshing. I mean, you never wonder where he stands on dogma.
Yeah, and he stands with the church, and that's the splendor of doctrine that we see. That type of clarity, and the church in her wisdom has given us such wonderful teachings and disciplines. My fear is that so many people, amidst all of the discussions, are really losing sight of this wonderful clarity that the church has given us. Doctrine, canon law, all those things are not meant to make life more difficult. They're meant to make life easier, and for us to understand and penetrate those riches of the faith more easily. And I think that's where he's such a shining example.
I want to get into the question of showing mercy versus law and doctrine. I want to get into that a little bit later, but first I want to ask you about this. We know that Cardinal Walter Kasper has led the charge for a long time of trying to open up communion, relax restrictions for communion to the divorced and remarried, and he and those of his mindset claim that they want to affirm the doctrine on the indissolubility of marriage, but we need to think of a practical pastoral way of applying it in real life. And there's some who see this as just a backdoor to watering down doctrine and undoing the teaching on the indissolubility of marriage. In your opinion, can we really separate doctrine from its practical application like this?
Yeah, absolutely not. And that it really flows from a misunderstanding of that relationship of doctrine to the pastoral, the canonical, to belief and truth. It really is centered around truth. The discipline of canon law, the discipline of doctrine, and all those things really is meant to bring forward what we believe. In other words, law doesn't make you holy. But what it does, according to John Paul II, is that it creates those conditions by which you can become holy. What law does and what discipline does in the church is that it seeks to actualize and put into practice what we believe. If we believe X, we're going to have to act Y. If we believe A, we have to act B. So to put it in the practical, if we believe that marriage is indissoluble, we cannot say that a second marriage is a second marriage, presuming that it's a divorce and remarriage situation, we cannot say that that second marriage is valid. And because of that, if we take seriously the scriptures, such as I'm thinking of 1 Corinthians 11:27 about he who eats and drinks the body of the Lord unworthily eats and drinks damnation upon himself, profaning the body of Christ. If we truly take that to heart, we can't say that those who are in an objective situation of adultery can receive communion. So, of course, we're going to be kind. Of course, we're going to be gentle. Of course, we're going to be pastoral in that sense. But to be truly pastoral and to be truly merciful is to make sure that people who are coming, who are in this situation, know exactly what that situation is, and that is against the reality of marriage and against the reality of the indissolubility of marriage.
Right. So what do you say to some of these bishops during the synod who are making claims that, oh, it's not pastoral to use words like adultery or, living in sin. We need to just stop using those words because they're hurtful to people. How would you respond to that?
I would say let's take the example of a physician. If somebody comes in and the physician examines them and he has some bad news for them, they have cancer, they have some sort of ailment. Of course, you don't want your doctor to come in, drop the bomb, and then leave. That would be very unkind. That being said, you also don't want a doctor who comes in and never tells you what you have. That's very, very frustrating, or just simply affirms you in the condition that you have. You want a doctor who's going to be straight up with you. You want a doctor who's going to kindly, gently, and clearly walk you through what it is that you have and how you can go about addressing that situation. In the spiritual life, it's the same thing. If those who are in these difficult situations need to be known, need to be taught, need to be explained, of course, gently and clearly, what it is and why it is this is incompatible with a life of faith.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy. I was just having a conversation today with some of my coworkers about the problem today of this prevailing notion of presuming upon God's mercy, which seems to have infected a lot of Catholics today. This presumption of God's mercy, that there's a loss of a sense of sin in general. And people sin without even thinking that they're sinning, in many cases, mortally sinning. And the confession lines are very short compared to how they were 50 years ago, whereas everybody goes up to receive communion. I mean, do you see it as helpful constantly to be talking about mercy and being pastoral while neglecting talking about mortal sin and the consequences of mortal sin and hell and that sort of thing?
Mercy without truth is not true mercy. And I'm seeing that's the danger that we can fall into very, very quickly. In emphasizing mercy, mercy always has to operate with the truth, because in God, mercy and justice and truth and love, all that is in its perfection. So in imitation of God and imitation of Christ, we have to address these pastoral situations in a way where we would actualize that truth and give people the message of mercy. What disturbs me quite a bit is, amidst all of the arguing, there was very, very little brought up about the notion of conversion. If we are to affirm and be welcoming to people, which we should be affirming and welcoming to people, if somebody comes to church who's in one of these situations, such as, in a same-sex union, a divorce and remarriage situation, an irregular marriage situation of some sort, if they come to church, we are to welcome them. However, we would be really, I would say, failing mercy if they come away from church not thinking, I need to change my life. And I think that's where the crux of it is. This idea of conversion and the idea of ongoing conversion was very little brought up at the Synod. And I wish that could have been brought out a little bit stronger, because it really helps to mitigate against the misunderstanding of mercy.
Yeah, I totally agree. The midterm relatio, I think most people would agree, was, well, I guess it depends on where you are on the ideological spectrum, but those of us who are Orthodox thought it was a complete disaster. And I think one commentator made the really good observation that amidst all the talk about being very welcoming and making people feel, just being open to people and being pastoral, there was no discussion of the supernatural. There's no discussion of the primary mission of the church, which is the salvation of souls.
Absolutely. Canon 1752, the very last canon in the Code of Canon Law, John Paul II, and at that time Cardinal Ratzinger, who was going through the draft with him, insisted that they put in an old canonical maxim, Salus animarum suprema lex, the salvation of souls is the supreme law. That's the focus of discipline. That's the focus of law. That's the focus of doctrine, is to make sure that we are in the care of souls, and that the gospel of salvation is brought forward. If the prodigal son came back, of course his father is going to welcome him, but of course there was a conversion there. And in the same way, we see over and over again in these parables of Jesus, the idea of forgiveness. All those things are brought in together with the idea of conversion and growing in holiness. He never told the woman caught in adultery that she was okay in doing what she did, or that we're not going to talk about that. He said, go and sin no more. Exactly. There was a clear conversion that was going on.
People always seem to leave that out. They say, oh, Jesus said not to judge. Well, he also said go and sin no more.
Correct.
So, okay, let's go back to this talk about being merciful, pastoral, sometimes at the cost of downplaying dogma. And there's a sort of antinomianism that's arisen. Cardinal Burke has spoken about it. And it seems to pit law and doctrine against mercy and being pastoral. So, in your opinion, is this fair, pitting one against the other?
Yeah, absolutely not fair, and is destructive to both. Really, a pastoral practice that's not grounded in the truth as actualized and explained by our doctrines and actualized and explained by our laws is really not a true pastoral practice. The relationship that you get between the church's canon laws and disciplines and what we believe, that relationship is a one-to-one relationship. Because we believe this, then we're going to have to actualize it like this. Pastoral practice really just calls us to say, look, in this situation, this couple in front of you, this person in my office who's having a difficult time living according to the teachings of Christ and his church, what can I do to bring the light of truth to this person? That's a true pastoral practice. That takes a strong stomach. That takes a very well-grounding and really being convinced that this is the true church, and really being convinced that God has preserved the teachings of the church the way that he has. That's true pastoral practice. To bifurcate the two, to pull the two apart, really does harm to both doctrine and pastoral practice as well.
I mean, I've gotten to many discussions with people over this idea of opening up communion to the divorced and remarried. You know, you have to ask yourself, are you truly being charitable? Are you truly being compassionate by, in a sense, confirming people in a mortally sinful lifestyle? I mean, is that true charity?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it goes back to the old saying, God loves you right where you are, but he loves you too much to leave you there. And I think in the same way, that's the task of the church as well. Of course, we love these people right where they are, but we love them too much to let them stay there. For those who are coming and who are in these types of situation, we love them way too much to have them stay in that situation, to have them stay in a state of objective mortal sin.
Right. And just to clarify for people out there, because there are actually a lot of Catholics who are very confused about the church's teaching on divorce and remarriage. Divorce is permitted in some cases, for instance, abuse and that sort of thing. It's just that if you have been validly married, you are not permitted to remarry, because according to our Lord, that's committing adultery. Now, and if you find yourself, well, let me ask you, since you're the canon lawyer, for Catholics out there, what if they are in a second marriage and their first marriage they believe is valid? What options do they have?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is obviously take it to prayer, and then go and sit down with a priest who is Orthodox, a priest who is convinced of the teachings of the church and will give it to you straight. I would recommend that they, first of all, do an examination of conscience to see how is it that they can reform their lives. How can they have a firm purpose of amendment? What can I do to bring my life into conformity with what the church has taught, into conformity with the life of grace, into conformity with the truth that marriage is indissoluble. In other words, if my first marriage was valid, this new one must not be valid. If that's the case, then what can I do to rectify that? For some, it may be the declaration of nullity process to investigate their previous marriage. For others, it may mean separation. For others, it may mean, if there are other types of situation, living as brother and sister. There's these different ways that the church has to go about it to say, look, if this is an adulterous, objectively adulterous situation, what can I do to rectify that, to make it right, and still respect the fact that marriage is indissoluble?
Let's say you've got a couple who's in a second marriage. They've found out that their first marriage is definitely valid, so they can't get a decree of nullity. They've got children, young children that they want to continue to raise together. Would it be correct to say that the only way that they could be readmitted to Holy Communion is, first, if they made a confession, second, if they committed to living chastely as brother and sister, if they needed to stay together to raise the children?
That's correct, because it's consistent with the notion of the indissolubility of the first marriage and consistent with our teaching on sexual morality. If that couple pledges with their spiritual director, with their confessor, to live a chaste life, meaning as brother and sister, for the sake of the children, they can't separate. The question that has to be asked then is, how do I live then with a person I am not married with?
Right. How would you respond to someone who says, oh, well, that's just impossible? How would you respond to that?
I would say nothing is impossible with grace, particularly living a moral life. And that's where the discernment has to come in. That's the challenge of the gospel. That's the moment of conversion. That's the moment that Christ looks at us and says, I set before you two paths, life and death. Choose life. That's when the person would have to look at themselves and say, what can I do to respond to God's grace? What are those safeguards that I can put in there? Nothing is impossible with God's grace.
Exactly. God would never demand something from us that he would make impossible for us.
That's correct.
I mean, he always gives us the grace to live out our vocation faithfully. Always.
If we are open to it, then his grace is transformative. And I've actually worked with couples who have been in that situation. And it's a very, very difficult situation to work with. But it brings about a lot of healing for these people to know, well, it's difficult, but I'm going to live according to God's grace. I'm going to live according to my true beliefs. I heard one person say what's conversion? Conversion is really taking sides with truth against yourself. And it's a beautiful way to put it, because regardless of what I feel, regardless of what I've done, regardless of how I may be tempted this way or that, conversion and living the life of grace is really to say, no, the truth is here, and I will stand with the truth, even against my own desires, even against my own choices.
Exactly. And we have to remember, too, especially those who are in those difficult situations, that we have to take the long view. What is at stake here? Eternity is at stake. Our souls are at stake. Our immortal souls are at stake, and there's nothing in the world worth doing to compromise your immortal soul. Nothing.
That's correct. If to death do us part, that's at most, 70, 80 years, something like that. Eternity is much longer than that.
Right. All right. So a commission's been formed to look into the annulment process and possibly make changes to streamline it. In your opinion, do you think the annulment process needs to be changed?
There's several anomalies that are going on with that proposal. If you look at the Annulment Commission, the so-called Annulment Commission, it's not so much surprising the names that are on there that are the names that are missing from there. Obviously, the glaring missing name is the prefect of the Signatura, Cardinal Burke. It's not on there. The other thing that's very jolting about it is whereas in the United States you have possibly, I've heard, as far as 70 to 75% of all declarations of nullities being granted a year, there's not an American on the commission at all. Which is a little odd. Regarding the proposal to reform the annulment procedure, the question that has to really be asked, first of all, is reform for what? I'm at a little bit of a loss. Now, I deal with annulment cases all the time. Both I've done it in diocesan tribunals. I've helped out with other tribunals. I've done it just as an independent canon lawyer representing parties here and there. And I have to scratch my head just a little bit thinking, what exactly are we looking for in an annulment reform? The danger is this. The danger is that you're going to get a group of people who want an annulment reform to make it easier. Then you're going to have another group of people who want annulment reform to make it more difficult. Both mentalities would be wrong. The annulment procedure, the declaration of nullity procedure, is an investigative procedure. It's one that seeks truth. We're not trying to make it hard for people. We're not trying to make it easy for people. We just want to know the truth. So what the church does is she says, okay, given the reality of marriage, given indissolubility, given the qualities and properties of marriage, the ends of marriage, all these things that are required for a marriage relationship, an act of marrying to be valid, were those things there? Is there anything that can overturn our presumption that this marriage is valid? And when you look at the declaration of nullity investigation procedure, I think it does that quite well already. There are many things in there that are designed to take the emotion out of it. Whenever you're dealing with the declaration of nullity procedure, there's high emotions running. You have people who have been divorced already, who have probably gone through a legal procedure for the divorce already. There's all kinds of family issues. Obviously, the relationship has broken down. So it's a sensitive procedure to begin with. 9 times out of 10, people enter it with those emotions running high. What the declaration of nullity procedure is designed to do is to put as objectively as possible, can we get to an objective truth here? Can we get to moral certainty that there was something with this relationship, something with this act of marrying that was off, that was invalid? That's what it's designed to do. I don't see much of a reason to change too much of it, besides just some window dressing, perhaps, because if you change too much of it, you're really doing a disservice to the ability to investigate what the truth is. The other thing that I would bring up also is that a lot of people don't realize we actually just did this not too long ago. In the late 90s, Pope John Paul II had asked for an examination of the declaration of nullity procedure. Within the next, I think, 6 years or so, there was a study that was done, and an instruction came out by the Pontifical Council for Legislative Texts. And what it did was that it consulted with the Rota, it consulted with all the proper parties and the proper entities, and came out with an instruction called Dignitas Connubii, the dignity of marriage. And what it does is that it tightened the declaration of nullity procedure. It didn't really change anything. It just made sure that we have instructions by which we can apply these very carefully and appropriately. That instruction, many of us canonists have been using and are still kind of getting used to. Wonderful instructions that I think have done what has already been proposed. So at this point, I'm not quite sure why we need another look at that. Things haven't changed that much. I fear that it's once again calling into question different aspects about the indissolubility of marriage.
All right. We've been talking with Benedict Nguyen. He's a professor of canon law at Ave Maria University. Thank you so much for being willing to talk with me today and offer your honest thoughts about these. Very, very good insights. Great discussion. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Christine.
Okay, you've been listening to Forward Boldly in collaboration with Regina Magazine. You can find all our shows at forwardboldly.com, and you can also listen to our podcast at Regina Magazine, found at blog.reginamag.com. As always, keep fighting the good fight of the faith, and, in the words of St. Joan of Arc, in God's name, forward boldly.